Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, I can obey both or I can ignore both. I was an E5 sergeant in the army stationed in Germany. On a sunny spring day I was to drive 2 senior enlisted men and 1 captain from Frankfurt to visit a training area south of Munich. I had a van ready to go, and as everyone got in they each took a moment to point out the "no smoking" stencil on the dash to me. The captain took extra time to tap on the stencil, with a hooked index finger, to be sure I saw it. None of them smoked and I was a smokestack. On any given day I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes. All 3 of them seemed to enjoy pointing out the "no smoking" sign to me. Normal Autobahn speeds for me were 85 to 95 miles per hour. At this speed our trip would take under 3 hours. Malicious compliance. When we reached the Autobahn I kept the speed at 55 miles an hour. If I came upon a slightly slower vehicle I did not pass rather than risk exceeding 55 miles per hour. In less than half an hour one of the senior enlisted men suggested I could drive a bit faster. I put on my serious face and using a hooked index finger I tapped the stencil under the "no smoking" stencil the captain taped on. Speed limit 55 miles per hour, 88 kilometers per hour. I watched the defeated expressions on their faces as they settled in for over a 5-hour drive each way. I did not smoke while I drove and I did not exceed 55 miles per hour. The fallout, for the next 2.5 years I was never again tasked as a driver. Next one is titled, They wanted 00% so that's what he got them. I worked for a company that provides a utility truck and one of the analytics they monitor is how long the truck stays in place with the motor on. The target number was something like 3%. I consistently was stuck in traffic due to my area being changed to the downtown area of my city and naturally raising my idle percent. My supervisor began constantly badgering me over the raise of my idle percent, about 10 to 12% higher now. After they decided to give me a written verbal warning I became the most efficient truck no idler in our branch and I brought it down to a 0.00 by shutting the truck off at every stop sign, red light, highway stopped in traffic, in drive-thrus, and instantly off when I got to where I was going. Now, remember this is a utility truck that is charging my 2 phones, laptop, tablet, and my various equipment's rechargeable batteries. All this juice sucking and no alternator spinning putting the power back into the truck battery causing it to die. A lot. Now the rules the company had made it forbidden for me to jump the truck myself so I had to call the company and they sent out a tow truck to jump start it for me. I could do it myself anyway and probably would have but they are writing people up out here for petty nonsense. And every time I call this tow truck it takes a minimum of 2 hours for it to show up. I began doing this multiple times a day, every day until they figured my truck was broken. It goes to the shop, checks out, they give it back, I kill it again. They end up giving me an entirely new truck, I start killing it, I repeated this process until they gave me the 3rd truck and the manager calls me to ask what my daily routine is. I go through the basics and add in the whole stop at red light, engine off. Stop in traffic, engine off, etc. And dude goes, "Why the heck are you doing this?" My supervisor wrote me up for my idle time being too high. This is completely ridiculous. He tossed my write-up and I'm guessing talked to the super because I never heard a word about idle time again and I quit caring about it. There's my dumb petty story, thanks for reading. Next one is titled, She told me to do exact what she says, and I did. I am a secretary for a medical facility that funds other medical institutions. I am also responsible for their travel to conventions and conferences. There is a very large, very highly attended conference held each year in which our medical professional staff are invited as presenters. One such Karen-esque presenter just has to be incredibly difficult as she feels she is above us dregs and never lets us forget it. As a presenter, they are given certain hotels that are reserved for them at a reduced rate. However, most are nowhere near the convention site and they end up paying a crapload of money to cabs, no Uber at the time. I set up the travel for at least 10 folk when I realized that by a loophole I can book them into the hotel where the conference is held. So I do that instead of allowing the conference coordinators to book them in heaven know where at the last minute, which they are prone to do. Karen come up to me and demands that I only book her into the hotels listed by the conference coordinators, and if I don't she will have me written up. So that's what I did. The day before they all leave for the conference, which was clean across the country on the West Coast, Karen found out she was not only the only one not booked in the conference hotel, but she was 9 miles away near the airport, and no, there were no more rooms available at conference hotel. She was hopping mad and stormed to my desk screaming about my putting her in a faraway 2-star hotel. I looked at her and calmly stated that she was in one of the 3 hotels the conference coordinators reserved for her, and she distinctly instructed me to only select those hotels and nothing else. She ended up spending more than $70 in cab fare to and from the hotel to the venue, while everyone else only had to go downstairs from their hotel rooms. She almost missed giving her presentation because she was late. After that, when I booked everyone for a trip, Karen no longer demanded I give her special treatment, and lets me use my judgment when booking hotels. Next one is titled, Golf Marshal Enforces the Rules Despite the Issues It Causes for Everyone. Bachelor party golf round on a Friday morning, pissing rain, nobody waiting for the rain to stop but us. Once it stops, myself and 7 others start our round. The pro shop was aware and had no problem with this. We played a 4 versus 4 scramble and are all decent, so we quickly lost sight of the group that started behind us. 6 holes in and we are basically all alone on this course. We were the first to start after the rain and couldn't see anybody behind us for at least a hole and 1/2. Major martial rule follower rolls up saying we have to split. Me. Why? Marshall. Those are the rules. Me. We know, but there is nobody we are holding up. Marshall. Doesn't matter, those are the rules. Me. So what if you split us up and the course starts backing up? Marshall. That is what it is. Rules are rules, so we decide to maliciously comply, split, and proceeded to take 2 more hours to finish the front 9. Walking out to the fairway, cart path only, with a 6 and deciding I needed a 7, walking back to get a 7, walking back to hit the shot only to realize I did needed the 6 all along. Lining up every putt for 5 minutes. Breaks to drink beers and smoke. Crap got backed up as you could imagine. Hole 12 and the marshal comes back. Okay, you all play together, but just speed it back up for God's sake. Apparently the pro shop chewed him out because people were mad we were taking so long. Kind of a shitty thing to do on our part, but it was my boy's bachelor party and we were a little intoxicated. Next one is titled, No Coffee for You. During the post-9/11 recession, I was working for a very big corporation. You've heard of them, and you've probably been a customer at some point, on an upper floor of a skyscraper in downtown Chicago. The corporation was seeking to pinch pennies any way they could. One of these methods was to set the thermostat to 78 degrees in the summer, which had us all sweating at our desks, and also watching the clocks, because 5:01 p.m. meant we could flee to somewhere that had air conditioning. Then they sent out another memo. Coffee would no longer be provided by the company. We'd had coffee service in the break rooms. Nothing fancy, just pre-portioned foil packets of Folgers or Maxwell House, and those diner-style drip coffee makers where the glass pots sit on the hot plates for hours until someone decides it's nasty and dumps it. We were also forbidden to have coffee makers at our desks, because fire safety. So what else was there to do, but go to Starbucks? This meant leaving the building via the elevators, walking a block or so, standing in line, paying $4 to $5 for something that used to be free. There was much grumbling at that, walking back to our building, buzzing in at the security desk, taking the elevators back, usually about a 20-minute process. More, if the line was long. I'm a programmer. A programmer's time is worth at least $100 an hour, once you factor in things like benefits, office floor space, equipment, and all the other overhead. Almost my entire department did this. We'd often leave the floor in groups to get our hot bean water, without which it's generally impossible to function in the afternoons. Which means the company was screwing themselves out of about $200 of productivity lost, per day, for my team alone. To save themselves about $3 of cheap ground coffee and 25 cents worth of electricity to heat it. Next one is titled, "Don't like me leaving early? Guess I'll leave earlier then." Cast of characters. Me, innocent bystander of the story. Mike, nitpicky coworker. Derek, coworker on disability. Story. I come into work this evening and one of the first things I'm greeted with is Derek telling me that he's leaving at 8:30 tonight. I ask, "Disability?" He says, "Yep." Background. Anyone who knows someone, or is themselves, on disability knows that the disability people don't screw around. 1 minute over your allowed hours for the week and you could lose your check. Anyhow, I didn't think the wiser until Derek follows up with the fact that, last week, Mike had been nitpicking him about leaving 30 or so minutes before the end of his shift. We're a closing crew in a grocery meat department. Once our crap is clean, we're pretty much done and leave early. Unless you're a full-timer, like Mike, who has to stick around to get their hours. Derek even tells Mike, "I leave before shift ends earlier in the week so that I can stay and help until we're all done later in the week, when we're at our busiest." This is pivotal because the store manager likes to close on Fridays to make sure we're ready for the weekend. He typically annoys us about making sure the meat wall is stocked before we leave. If he comes in the next morning to an empty wall, he raises hell. On a good night, Derek would finish first and top the wall off before heading home. Cue the malicious compliance. This week, Derek worked his full shift every evening, wouldn't leave a minute before he was scheduled. However, our department leader schedules Derek over his disability time, but gives Derek any leeway he needs to stay within time, so he can arrive late or leave early, no consequences. The time added up to where he had to leave super early, at 8:30 this evening, normally 10. Unfortunately for Mike, our department was blown out by the time we were finished cleaning. That tends to happen when the weekend forecast is nice and we live in a state with a famous horse race tomorrow. This meant Mike had another good hour of work, yay overtime, ahead of him before he could go home. As I was leaving, "This is job 2 for me, and I don't work enough for OT, so I was out." I told Mike, "Next time, don't nitpick the guy about leaving early, he'll just leave earlier." Next one is titled, "I charged you too much? My friend, you have no idea. I used to be a manager at a small family-owned restaurant. We had this one customer who I'll call D, it's short for douchebag. Anyways, he used to be a really nice guy. Always fun to talk to, had interesting stories, the works. However, after about 8 months of him being irregular, he asked me out. I, very politely and kindly, turned him down. And, my God, you would have thought I threatened his mom with the way he reacted. So, following that point, he turned into a giant douchebag. Always snapping at me, both literally and figuratively, complaining about food that he never had an issue with before, etc. A couple months later, we had some changes to our menu and some slight price changes. Notably, his favorite soup, elk chili, was 75 cents more. He stormed in and sat and ordered elk chili. I said, "Of course. I just want to make sure you're aware that of the change." He snapped at me and said, "How dumb do you think I am? I can read." "Okay my dude, whatever you can say." So he gets his soup, his meal, a few beers and a glass of one of our higher quality bourbons. I bring him the check and he flips out. "This is more than it was before. You never told me that it would be more. This is fraud. I'm not paying this. Fix it." "Okay, I can do that." However, on the check, I had also charged him for only happy hour price beers, which was significantly less than our regular prices. Happy hour ended before he even got there. I also charged him for a lower quality bourbon by the same company. Please note, the owner was okay with that since he was technically irregular and had spent a lot of money there. So I fixed his check for him. But I fixed all of it. The new check was about $15 more than it was before. He was so mad he was lost for words, and I took that time to show him how I fixed his check. He never came back on nights I was working after that. I don't work there anymore. I wonder how he's doing. Next one is titled, I don't work there anymore. My employer decided to convert all of a certain class of our records from paper-based files to digital. There were 3 immediate problems. Our company was not going to buy a generic system, but develop our own unique, tailored system. It was to be done on the cheap, with net savings for record keeping from year 1. The guy in charge, let's call him Genius, always, and I mean always, thought he was the smartest guy in room. Believe me, he wasn't. Anyway, one of the girls I worked with took on the project on the condition that she could have the next July off for her wedding and honeymoon. She worked hard, and the project was actually making progress. One of her duties was passwords, none of which could be written anywhere because Genius knew this was bad. She periodically reminded Genius about the July wedding and he told her it'd be fine, but never signed off the paperwork. Come mid-May, the project is way behind, mainly because Genius told management it could all be done in-house at negligible cost, and Genius kept changing the design every time he read a new magazine article on IT. My friend was then told 6 weeks out from the wedding that her leave was cancelled. The project took priority and she'd just have to reschedule her wedding, honeymoon, the works. Genius could not see that this might be a problem. So she did her job, updated the passwords as required, never recording them anywhere, as required, and resigned without notice the last day of June. On her honeymoon she gets a frantic call from Genius demanding all the passwords. Sorry, I don't work there anymore, click. That's why a decade later our company still has a few hundred electronic case files we can't access. Last one is titled, Comcast refused to complete my cable installation unless I let them install their horrible bloatware on my PC. This happened circa 2010, so maybe their corporate practice has changed. But perhaps not. I moved to a new address, and duly called up the only cable provider in the area, Comcast, of upvoted swastika fame. They sent out a guy in a van to install my cable internet service. Before he left, he said he had to install Comcast's proprietary software on one of my PCs, otherwise Comcast wouldn't let him close out the ticket. Fortunately, I had prepared for this. I have many PCs and computers, all running the relevant Windows or Apple OS. But I kept one special computer running Linux. I ushered the Comcast tech to this computer and said, "This is the only one I have right now, I'm afraid." He worked on it for about 5 minutes and then gave up. "I got a personal laptop in my van," he said. "I'll just install the Comcast thing on that and we'll call it a day, okay?" Okay by me, Comcast service guy. Okay by me. Thanks for listening.